SEFAA Soundbites, your quick pulse on all things multifamily, brought to you by the Southeast Florida Apartment Association. The Southeast Florida Apartment Association podcast and the views and information shared in this episode are provided solely for general guidance, informational, and educational purposes only, primarily for professionals in the multifamily housing industry. The views expressed by hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Southeast Florida Apartment Association. This podcast does not constitute legal, financial, or operational advice. Listeners should follow their own company's policies and standard operating procedures, and, when needed, seek professional counsel before acting on any topic discussed. So, grab your coffee, plug in, and let's get prepared. This is SEFAA Soundbites.
Quarter one has flown by so fast. Welcome to another episode of SEFAA Soundbites, the official podcast of the Southeast Florida Apartment Association. I'm your host, Ashley McIntosh, 2026 SEFAA Secretary, ready to bring you quick, impactful conversations designed to inform and inspire multifamily professionals. South Florida has been in a development boom, and there are new properties coming online constantly. With that in mind, today we're diving into innovative marketing and strategies you can implement for your lease-up, highlighting tips and tricks, strategies that work, and other useful info that you can use to bring your new community to market and build occupancy fast. I'm so thrilled to be joined by my fellow board director, Erica Chapman.
Hello.
Let's dive in. This is SEFAA Soundbites. So, Erica, let's talk about setting the stage. So, when I think about setting the stage, I think about, what actually defines a lease-up. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so that's an interesting thought here because I think it's ever evolving. I think a lease-up, there's so many aspects to it, and it is on so many levels, could be one way, 1 year, and then the next year just shifts so rapidly in the industry. And so I think a lease-up is exciting. It's new, strategic planning, knowing your market. I think the person that's going to do a lease-up or a renter wants that specific newness. But on the other hand, there's a lot of flip sides to the lease-up. There's problems with construction. There's delays. There's maybe an expectation that wasn't met. Right now, through Fort Lauderdale, through Boca, through Florida in general, Central Florida, it's booming with new construction. Yeah. And so we have to look at it as new and exciting, and for that specific renter that's looking for that type of thing versus a stabilized property.
For sure. I always think about lease-ups in terms of timing. And I remember when, it was the cool thing to stabilize your deal in 12 months or less. Now those are running like 18 to 24 months. Yeah. So I agree with you that, it has certainly changed over the last several years. What do you think the importance of brand identity and like pre-leasing buzz is before the units actually hit the market? Yeah.
So that's really great. I think it's super important, especially when it comes to basically with a lease up, it's a new business. You want to treat it as a new business. So what do we do in a new business? There's ribbon cuttings. There's specific marketing, there's extra spend, there's connecting with a certain maybe demographic, maybe section of the city that you want to market for your specific lease up, depending on, the vibe and flow of what you want to do. But that actually sets the stage. Your team sets the stage. You're getting out ahead of it versus a stabilized deal where it's just a constant, steady flow of a marketing strategy. Here, you have to always stay on top of it because you could have a new lease up on one block and then down the block is the same exact type of lease up. So what's going to set your lease up apart? And that's why that pre-marketing is really, really important, and doing it strategic and really knowing your demographic, knowing your renter, knowing your city and what is going to be a draw to that specific lease up there.
Yeah, I know the last several lease ups that I've had the opportunity to spearhead, I've gone to some of the other board members. And I think that's why SEFAA is such a good resource.
Yes.
Just because there are so many people that we serve alongside who have the knowledge just about the ongoing trends. And so I think it may have been Patrick that suggested to me one time to have my new manager go somewhere in the market.
Yes.
Whether it's a store or it's a coffee shop or it's a restaurant, just to feel the energy in that area so that you'll understand the type of demographic you'll serve. So,
yeah. And I think that's really important. And that's why, the SEFAA is so good, because there's so much network abilities there that can connect you. And you might not see it right away, but then you look at 2 or 3 months down the road and it just is like this trickle effect.
Absolutely. So, absolutely. You kind of touched on this, but I want to ask you, what do you think the characteristics are that will differentiate your lease-up marketing strategy from a stabilized asset strategy?
Yeah. So that's really good. I think I've been in the industry for 20 plus years. I've done both lease-up, stabilized, renovation deals.
Wait, what's your favorite?
I'm a lease-up person. I do love lease-up, but let me tell you something. I love a good stabilized asset.
I do. Stabilized girl.
I really, really do. The last property I was at for 6 years. And let me tell you, I love that property like it was my house. Yeah. So there is a difference. I think it takes 2 different teams to do 2 different jobs, Absolutely. Right? Because we are a business. So if I have a startup business, I'm going to have a staff that needs to understand how to start up this company rather than the stabilized asset where you have just a stabilized crew. You're going to keep it running. You're going to keep it smooth, the day-to-day process. And I think that's the difference. So from a marketing standpoint, you want to have to think, and you have to have your team think out of the box.
Absolutely.
And I think that is the key to making a success. And like you said in the beginning, we're not looking at lease-ups anymore that are done in 15 months.
Right.
We are looking at sort of a longer term lease-up. So the strategies have to be different when it comes to that.
For sure.
And whoever's going into that deal needs to understand that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's going to be a key indicator of what kind of team you pick for that site. And when you think about marketing for a stabilized asset, I think it kind of shifts also. So you're going to go from attracting newer people to really trying to retain the people that you have. And so I think some of that marketing shifts from maybe decreasing on a PPC campaign to really focusing on your resident strategies.
Exactly.
And how you can retain those residents.
Yeah. And I think too, when we look at marketing as a whole, we see the shift of who's renting now. We have our standard, which I think the SEM campaigns are always very, very strong. But when you're looking at now what people are really wanting, right? They're looking at Instagram. They're looking at TikTok. They're looking at, real photos on an iPhone versus sometimes we get it mistaken. People don't really care. I mean, I hate to say this, but maybe not too professional here. We want real life, pictures or phones or videos, text, something tangible that people are looking for. Because when you look at the strategies here on who is renting, the largest is still millennials, but the Gen Zs are growing at a faster pace where I think by the next maybe 2 years, they're going to outpace.
So you're walking right into segment 2, which is excellent. And we're going to talk a little bit about digital and data-driven tools, which you sound very comfortable with.
I love it.
I'm hoping to be educated myself today. So leveraging technology to find and convert prospective residents is what we all think about. It's what we all live and breathe every single day, especially in our roles. But what are some of your thoughts on how data and analytics may refine your marketing spend if it reduces your cost per lease and optimize campaigns based on what is going to actually drive the leases?
Yeah. So that's actually, I love this, right? Because it goes back into teams and it goes back to so many people, which I think is like the hidden secret. So many people want more leads. Yeah. They just want leads. So they're going to do whatever they can and spend a lot on the leads. But actually what we're missing is let's look for the quality leads. Let's go in and dive down to where are we going to find what we're actually looking for.
Good point.
And so I think when you look at that, you look at, okay, teams need to understand when it comes to leads, how quickly, what's the personal touch, filtering it, the time between answering. So I think, again, it goes back to what is the mass majority on,
right?
And that is the Instagrams, that is especially your websites now, websites, they're like, hey, I'm going to skip on the website spend. But guess what? You have some great virtual tours on your website. You have teams that go through a big one for me And I will swear up and down by this personally, texting. I know at my prior property, I'm not there anymore, but my team is a big texter. Yeah. People want fast. People want direct touches.
Yes.
And texting people has been a great success.
So when we think about the growing role of like digital channels, our paid SEO and our organic social media, when we talk about, just capturing renter interest and trying to get those tours booked, how is that helping or not helping your teams? And I'm asking because with the evolution of like Meet a Lease, with the evolution of all of the other different products that probably every management company is using, because we all tend to use the same RealPage, Yardi setups, right?
Yes.
How do you feel like that is affecting your leases and whether you're actually capturing them?
So that's really good. And sometimes when there's so much, and again, it depends on your platform that you're working with. When you're working with a Lease-Up specifically, you need as much in the beginning to get out there.
Absolutely.
So whatever catches is what catches. Stabilized deals, you can kind of filter that a little bit differently. But right out of the gate, you need to put everything on the deck.
Yes.
But I think, again, it just kind of goes back to what the teams are comfortable filtering out too, as far as like what people are actually the easiest thing. So people, where do they look? They look online. Right? They look on social media. Yes. They look on the website. Yeah. They look on, actually a huge growing trend is stuff being posted on TikTok.
Yeah.
I think apartment.com is good as well because it gets you like in the running, like if you get a higher ad.
Yes.
But ultimately, I think it's just depending on what people like stumble on. And if your property is just out there, especially on the online aspect of it.
Yeah.
Also, it's very review based. I look at a lot of things in the review sense. People are looking at Google.
Yes.
They'll go right to Google and they'll look at it. And that's like, listen, I would say if I have 5 people walking in the office, I would say 4 out of the 5 are going to mention, I saw you on Google.
Yes.
So we want to make sure our reviews are good. So now it's working with the teams to make sure that their presence is on Google. And then that leads to other things. So I think when it comes especially to these types of renters, anywhere from 29 to 44, guess what they're looking? They're looking on social media platforms. They're looking on Google reviews and they're looking on your website.
Yeah.
And it's word of mouth too.
Yeah.
So
I think when these programs and platforms first became introduced to our industry, it made me a little bit nervous, right?
Yeah.
Because my thought process was, how do we balance the use of AI, the more sophisticated and more modern tools, with what we need to be focused on every day? And it sort of led me down this road of like customer service and what that roadmap looks like, and how back in the days, because I'm an old school girl, how we thought about the life cycle of a resident, the entire cycle, where it goes from a tour, right, to this person becoming a prospective resident there. Now this person is my resident. Now this person is renewing.
Yes.
And when they finally go and buy a home, or if they don't buy a home, then they move out. So that brings me to a good question for you, Erica. How can leasing and marketing teams meaningfully measure success?
So I think it's a process. And I'm going to say that because I think it's a tiered level situation. Going back to your AI, right? I think there's a place for AI. AI is involving in so many different areas of leasing teams, programs, what we use. And I think that it all comes back to consistency.
Yeah.
So I think that when you look at answering the phones, for example, you want, okay, how much information are we giving the person on the other line? So that when you and I pick up the phone, we're picking up sort of right where they left off.
Right.
And I think that that's an important flow into it. But measuring success can be measured on a lot of different angles. I think when you have the team alignment and everybody's on the same wavelength, I think that that's a good measure, because then there's going to be an even flow throughout the office that transitions into the life cycle of the prospective renter.
Yeah.
So
sometimes when I really want to measure success, I go and sit at the property.
Yes.
I always tell people, just because the results are showing that they're successful because it looks great on paper, may not always be that way.
Yeah.
So, right, are you turning staff over but are they still leasing a lot?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a property that leases itself, right?
Yeah.
But just kind of sitting with the team, hearing what the residents are saying when they're walking through the door, hearing what renters are saying when they're coming back from a tour.
Right.
You know, do they look defeated? Are they exhausted? Is the tour too long?
Right.
You know, what is that experience like? I think it tells you a lot.
Yeah.
I always look at the bonus lines too, because if they're making money, they're successful, right?
And I think too, you know, you look at your reputation, you look at things like Kingsley, you know, and I often tell teams, you know, don't get defeated by that. These are growth opportunities.
Absolutely.
Right. So I like to take my teams from some place and get them to a destination. You know, we're on a journey with property management and the success is ever growing. And it should be, I would always tell my teams, this is an exciting moment for people that are coming in, that are looking for homes. Like, this is our time to help them in their life, you know, and it's a time to build that relationship with them. So you're right, sitting at the properties, looking at what's going on, you know, looking at their smiles and just having conversation, you know, you can tell a lot by just that.
And I think we used to be a lot more focused on that than what we are now.
It is.
Because with so many tools in place, sometimes
you can get lost.
The basics are just lost. They get lost in the sauce.
And they get lost in doing.
Yes.
And I often said too, and this is one thing that I'm working on too, in my realm of influence and what I'm doing now for my company is really getting teams back together.
Yes.
Really having, you know, meetings again and, you know, getting the leasing consultants together, getting managers together on a more consistent basis, you know, having more frequent check-ins, you know, giving more awards where awards are due, you know, and I think, like you said, there was a bit of time where that gets lost, but people want to feel valued in this industry because it is stressful.
Yes. You know, it's funny that would be your point for this, because that is a wonderful segue to something that I feel very passionate about, and it's community engagement and differentiation. I think they put that word on here just to trip me up, right?
Yeah.
So when you think about standing out in a crowded market, our minds in 2026 might go to marketing. It may go to having the best looking people, having the best people, you know, having the sharpest team on TikTok. But I want to know what you think about local partnerships within the community. Does that engagement matter? From open houses to preferred employer, which that is very rare now. You know,
very rare.
You can walk in a property and they don't have a PEP plan.
That's right.
Where you and I,
back in the day, we had
a list, right? We had a long list. If somebody walked in, I'm like, oh, do you work at
SEFAA? Yeah, you get a discount, baby.
You get a discount. I'm going to waive your admin fee.
That's right.
And so what are we doing with those partnerships now? Would we have to spend so much in marketing? If we were still focused on those types of partnerships and building those kind of relationships in our communities. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Oh, I think I'm very passionate about this too, because I love the high touch when it comes to this, because the people that you're going to attract people when you go out there, and people know, and that goes back to the Lease-Up mentality, like, you know, going out, visiting businesses. Hey, we're the new guy on the block. Like, come visit us, you know, or just come, you know, talk to us, you know, because we are social people. I think we need to get back to that. And you're right. You know, if our teams just went back to basics in could be customer service, the marketing, knowing who your small town stores are.
Except we can't go back to the for rent book.
Right. No. Yeah, that's right. We're not doing the for rent, you know.
No more books.
Yeah. But, you know, just kind of just being social again. And saying, hey, look, we're a partner. Whatever you need, come. And then, you know, we'll work together. And I think that's a lost art, you know, because I think people are too afraid to maybe knock on a door or walk outside and do something.
We assume people's lifestyles. We assume what they need or what they don't need. I remember being a leasing consultant in Boca. And Office Depot corporate office was across the street from my property. And my regional had come to the property and she's like, you know, you guys need to be hitting the pavement. We got to get these leases. And I'm like, well, I'm going to walk across the street, because I constantly have people coming in here that say that they're coming to work with Office Depot. And I would go there every Friday morning. Literally for months and months and months.
Wow.
Until probably 50% of our community had people from Office Depot, or it was from a referral from someone who knew someone.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes when we assume, oh, this person works at this company, they may not want to live here.
Right.
They probably own a home.
You don't know.
You don't know who that person knows.
Yeah.
And so there's your free marketing right there.
Exactly.
There's your word of mouth. There's your, hey, this girl came in here bothering me with donuts again this Friday. Aren't you moving here? Do you need an apartment? There's a great community across from where I live. This will foster community for them too. We can get together after work.
Yep. That
person comes to the community, they invite somebody else. So you've got your free marketing, but how does this work given the resident increase in needs these days? And the fact that our teams may really not have that time to get outside of the office and go and sort of do this grassroots marketing.
Yeah. So, well, here's the thing with that too. And I'm a big component of the time management.
Yes.
And I think with any good thing, there needs to be somewhat of a schedule. And I think delegation is key. I think a lot of people just get stuck in their own way. They don't delegate. They don't know how to manage. So going back to the basics of that, it could just be one time a week for 45 minutes.
Absolutely.
We're not looking at, hours in the day. We're looking at small touches.
Yes.
Or calls. Hey, call someone to say, hey, can I do this? It's just, again, it goes back to thinking out of the box in this industry, especially since these lease-ups are taking longer.
Yes.
Especially since, there's so much competition on the street and, just thinking outside the box, team meetings to talk about these things. What are your passions? What are your gifts?
Yeah.
If you're an extrovert and you love that kind of stuff,
you gotta be out the door.
Bye,
Yes.
And if you're more introverted, you say, hey, let's share what happened when I get back. Or, hey, let's go together. Let's just shut the office down for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. It's okay because that's the industry that we're in. And that's why we don't want to lose that.
We've talked about basics a lot too. And it makes me think about that in the sense that, when we think about content and all of the experience, from the time you walk into a property to the way that it smells, to if there is some type of branded item that is going to be noticeable at every property from every management company. We spend so much time on those things.
Yeah.
And I wonder sometimes, is it as noticeable as what you just described?
Yeah.
Is it as noticeable for the brand as it would be if I walked into a person's office and they remembered that I toured the property last week? And somebody picks it up and they say, oh, you were here last week with Brandon. He showed you a 1-bedroom apartment. Did you want to lease the apartment? He's off today, but I can take care of you. Yeah. So sometimes I wonder if we are thinking effectively and thinking of what we can do internally that is it's free in a sense, right? Yeah.
The majority of people who rent feel the connection.
Yes.
They'll see 5 different apartments.
All the same bells and whistles, right?
Same amenities. But what they will remember and what they always come back to is who you are as a person.
Absolutely.
And how you made them feel walking out the door. Because when I come back, I always remember, how did this person make me feel?
Yes.
And that's where it goes back to the on-site team where it's like, let's just do something. Let's try something different. Let's try new strategies.
And the tools are great.
Yeah.
But learn how to make those tools work for your team.
Exactly.
Also. The tools cannot be set it and forget it.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
They've still got to be worked and touched. Like you said, these high touch points.
Yeah.
You still have to have someone who's touching these things. So Erica, one of the things that we have not talked about today is something that I'm seeing very often. And it is the influx of realtors and brokers being sort of pushed back into the market right now. And I'm finding that we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars with brokers. And the unique thing about this is that, from a perspective of finances, can you save some marketing dollars by, appealing your property more for realtors? Tell me a little bit about that, because I'm sure you've kind of seen some of this in the market as well.
Yeah. So it is, especially in lease-ups, very realtor driven, and we love our realtors.
Of course.
We do. We love our realtors, and they help us tremendously. But we have to look at, like you said, as a cost thing. And how do we get our teams to be able to then build that relationship
There you go.
that the realtor would be already brought the person in. Okay. They're managing that situation. They lease the apartment, and then the leasing staff is sitting here getting them on the back end.
Yes.
What we want to do is make sure that we shift that.
Yes.
We want to maybe offer the concession and have it heavy staff driven, heavy, I want to touch you from the very first all the way to the last, because guess what? It's you and me in this relationship.
And what about when we used to send like those emails to the realtors in the market? I feel like it was giving our on-site team members an opportunity to manage that experience, right? I've got this apartment. I need it gone.
Yes.
I'll pay double commission to get this apartment gone.
Right.
And it becomes a conversation between our team and that realtor.
Yes.
I think what makes me nervous about this interaction in 2026 right now is it going to cut some of the marketing dollars, right? And how is that going to be impactful to our sites, especially given that we talked about lease-ups are taking more time now?
Yeah.
So is that a place where we should put more dollars?
I don't know. I don't think it is a place we should put more dollars, because I don't think we want to sacrifice all the rest of the presence.
Correct.
And I think we can move away from the realtor, teach our teams how to market effectively.
Yes.
And touch the current generations that are coming in or the demographics that's coming in. And then also really focus on the online presence that work. Remember, it's not just getting a bunch of leads, it's getting the right leads.
Absolutely.
And I think once you focus on that, your teams are able to close that. So when you think about the perspective of self-guided tours, it's a growing thing.
Yeah.
It is where people now are coming in and they just want to come to the site. They want to check in. They want to see the apartment, the amenities, and then they'll lease the apartment.
Yeah.
So again, where do you put your efforts? And I think that's where being creative and really not losing that touch and really walking through the whole journey with the prospect from start to finish is super important.
And it also is what you've been talking about kind of during our entire conversation, and the importance of the team really being content savvy.
Yes.
And understanding how to post these things. Because sometimes you'll have a realtor walk into your office and say, I've already showed them the apartment. They just want to physically see it, because that realtor has taken the time to build a rapport and they've come to see the apartment.
They've already done it.
They know what they're doing the moment they walk in. So I think you're right, is that, we've got to get focused on our people being able to build that rapport.
Yeah. Being consistent, building the rapport, being in alignment. Yeah. It's good.
Well, this was amazing. I am so excited that we got to spend this time today. So remember, SEFAA has exciting events on the horizon, ideal for recognizing achievements and providing valuable resources to succeed. Check out the SEFAA website for details on our upcoming events. That's a wrap for this episode of SEFAA Soundbites. A huge thank you to Erica for sharing her expertise on new strategies to implement for your next lease-up. If you liked today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to SEFAA Soundbites on Spotify and YouTube, or listen anytime at www.sefa.org by clicking the podcast section under the info tab. I would love your feedback. Leave a comment or share this episode with a colleague who could use a little industry inspiration. Thank you for listening. I'm Ashley McIntosh, 2026 SEFAA Secretary, and this has been SEFAA Soundbites.